What if I told you that the real secret to financial freedom isn't found on Wall Street, but in the Bible? We're living in an age of debt, spending, and buy now, pay later. But there's an ancient, simple principle that can completely transform your life. It's called sowing and reaping. I still remember that morning as if it were yesterday. The sunlight filtered weakly through the cracked, stained glass windows of St. Paul's Church, painting broken colors on the dusty wooden floor. The air smelled of age, old hymnals, forgotten prayers, and silence that carried the weight of time. I was standing there, broom in hand, sweeping what remained of the pews. Most of them were broken, their wood splintered and faded from years of neglect. I wasn't there for the money. The church barely had any. I was there because I needed to be somewhere that still whispered the name of God. As I swept, a beam of light caught the edge of the cross above the altar, a cross that hadn't been cleaned in years. Dust covered its surface like the world's forgetfulness. I stopped, stared, and for a long time said nothing. Inside me, a voice spoke quietly. The world has forgotten many things, and perhaps the most powerful truth it ever knew, that whatever a man sows, that he shall also reap. My name is Jacob. I'm 30 years old. I live in Washington, D.C., where people wear ambition like armor and measure success by the number of zeros in their bank accounts. 4 years ago, I thought I had it all figured out. I was the founder and CEO of a small digital marketing agency with 10 employees, young, creative people who believed we could conquer the world. In our first 3 years, business boomed. Contracts poured in faster than I could manage. Clients loved us. I moved into a modern apartment downtown, bought a shiny black Tesla, and started wearing designer suits. People called me a rising star. I liked that. No, I lived for that. I remember walking into restaurants and feeling like everyone should know who I was. I was the self-made man, the guy who did it without help, the guy who didn't need anyone, not even God. My social media was a highlight reel of success: rooftop dinners, luxury trips, champagne with clients. I told myself I was building my dream. But deep down, something was wrong. Every night, after the parties and phone calls ended, I'd sit alone in my apartment staring at the ceiling. The silence was heavy. I worked harder, thinking peace would come once I earned just a little more. But every time the month ended, I would ask myself, where did all the money go? No matter how much I earned, it never felt enough. I spent like tomorrow would never come. New suits, gadgets, a bigger office, fancier dinners, trying to fill a hole that only grew deeper. Then the 4th year came. The year everything fell apart. The economy turned. Clients started pulling out. One by one, contracts disappeared. I burned through my savings trying to keep the company alive. I took loans, sold my car, even maxed out my credit cards. But the debt was heavier than my pride. And one cold November morning, my accountant looked at me across the desk and said quietly, "Jacob, it's over." When the office closed, I sat in my car for hours. The dashboard lights glowed faintly as I stared at a stack of unpaid bills and bank notices. I felt the kind of emptiness that swallows a man whole. For the first time in years, I whispered, "God, what did I do wrong?" A few days later, I walked into St. Paul's Church. I hadn't been there in years. The pastor didn't ask questions. He just smiled, handed me a cup of coffee, and said, "You're welcome here." I spent that afternoon sitting quietly in the back pew, watching people pray. Real people, not entrepreneurs or influencers, just people. And I felt something break inside me. That night, back in my small rented apartment, I picked up the old Bible my mother had given me years ago. The pages were worn and yellowed, but as I opened it, my eyes fell on a verse I had never truly seen before. Do not be deceived. God cannot be mocked. Whatever a man sows, that he shall also reap. Galatians 6:7, I read it again and again. Then I whispered, maybe my problem wasn't that I didn't have enough money. Maybe I've been sowing the wrong seeds. The next morning, I made a decision. It wasn't dramatic, no music, no thunder, just a quiet conviction. I decided that from every bit of money I earned, no matter how small, the first portion would go to helping others and supporting the church. It wasn't easy. At that time, I barely had anything. But every Sunday, I'd put a small envelope in the donation box, sometimes $10, sometimes $50, and whisper, this is my seed. I also began cutting down unnecessary expenses. No more showing off, no more buying things to impress people I didn't even like. Instead, I started investing my time and skills into helping small nonprofits with their online presence for free. I told myself, I'm going to sow faith, not fear. And somehow I felt lighter. 3 months passed. I was freelancing, designing websites, helping small businesses, teaching kids basic marketing skills. It wasn't glamorous, but it kept me afloat. Then one day, I got a call from an old friend, Aaron, a former client who had moved to Baltimore. He said, Jacob, I'm starting a new project. It's a community-based startup that helps small churches raise funds for local families in need. I need someone who understands both business and faith. I thought of you. At first I laughed. Faith? Me? But he was serious. Within weeks we were working side by side. The work was meaningful, fulfilling, and surprisingly, profitable. The company grew faster than either of us expected. One night, as I walked home through the quiet streets of D.C., I looked up at the city lights and smiled. When you sow generosity, you reap joy. When you sow faith, you reap freedom. That was the moment I realized. I wasn't chasing money anymore. I was chasing purpose. And money was simply following. If you're listening to this, I want to share what I learned. The principle that changed my life. 1. Sow right, reap right. You can't sow fear, greed, or selfishness and expect peace or abundance. 2. Sow consistently. Don't give up. Seeds don't grow overnight. It takes time, patience, and faith to see the harvest. 3. Sow by faith, not by fear. The world says, hold on tight. But God says, open your hands. The world teaches us to invest in ourselves, to climb higher, push harder, build bigger. But Christ teaches us to invest in others. Because real wealth is not what you keep, but what you give. That is the secret the world forgot. As my life stabilized, I started sharing my story online. I launched a small Facebook group called Faith and Finance, where I talked about biblical financial principles, generosity, stewardship, contentment. At first, only a few people joined, but slowly the community grew. We discussed not just money, but mindset, the heart behind every dollar. Soon after, I started a YouTube channel. My first video was titled, God's Economy Works Differently. To my surprise, people listened. They weren't just looking for financial advice. They were searching for meaning. People didn't just learn how to manage their money, I said in one of my videos. They learned how to manage their hearts. If you're still listening, maybe you're where I was, tired, anxious, broke, or empty. Maybe you've worked hard, done everything right, and still feel like something's missing. Listen to me. God doesn't want you to be rich. He wants you to be free. And true freedom begins when you believe this. Every seed you sow in the name of Christ will never be wasted. Even if it's small, even if no one sees it, even if the soil looks dry, God sees every seed, and He never forgets a single one. That brings me back to the church, the old one with the cracked glass and dusty cross. I put down the broom, knelt on the wooden floor, and closed my eyes. And for the first time in a long time, I prayed, not for success, but for wisdom. Dear Lord, thank you for reminding me that everything I have belongs to you. Forgive me for the years I sowed pride, greed, and fear. Teach me to sow faith, generosity, and love. Help me to see people, not prophets. And when the harvest comes, let it not make me proud, but grateful. Amen. As I opened my eyes, sunlight streamed through the broken window again, brighter this time. Dust floated in the air like tiny seeds dancing in the light, and I smiled, because I knew my new season had already begun. If this story spoke to your heart, take a moment to share it. Someone out there might need to hear it today. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, not just to follow another channel, but to be part of a community that believes faith can change how we live, how we give, and how we grow. Let's keep sowing seeds of hope together.